Rick, midway through the 2012 NBAA convention, there's obviously been kind of a dearth of news as people kind of work their way through the year and, of course, waiting for the election to see which way the shoe is going to fall from there. But there is something pivotal, important, and even urgent on the horizon, and that's the upcoming Part 145 rule situation with the FAA. Where do we stand right now? And please explain the legitimate urgency behind this issue.
Well, this is a big one. We've done this 3 times. This is our 3rd time around, and as they say, 3rd time's a charm. The challenge we have is that here at NBAA in particular, we have 4,500 repair stations worldwide, and this industry here represents about, give or take, close to 1,000 of them. Typically specialty shops doing some test and inspection required by 145. If this rule goes through as written right now, as it's proposed, the rule becomes effective 60 days after the final rule is published. 2 years after that, if the FAA doesn't get around to service you, you close your business. There is no transition for you. You have to submit a brand new manual, brand new 3 manuals, repair station manual, quality control manual, and a new training program for approval by the FAA before they can issue you a certificate. And if this goes through, if they don't have time, they close the doors. We know right now the FAA is not issuing any new certificates. We just got notice from one of our members this week that the Portland FSDO, the Portland District Office, doesn't have the resources to take a new certificate. We know of a good dozen different district offices that literally have a queue right now that in some cases is 3 years long to get a new certificate, and yet this rule is based on the FAA issuing 5,000 new certificates in 24 months.
Not going to happen.
And if it doesn't happen, the FAA is not at fault. The business closes its doors. This is a big one. And it's not that people intentionally plan to put companies out of business. They just didn't consider the unintended consequences of sequestration, workforce issues, and stuff like that within the agency itself.
And we've got but a few days left to comment on this.
Comments are due November 19th. Full spectrum of information, as always, is available at aea.net. The FAA says there's little or no effect. There's no cost effect on this one. Mm-hmm. They've totally misgauged this one. Anybody who went through the 2001 rewrite, the effort to redevelop and resubmit new manuals is a serious undertaking, administrative burden. To revise the training program that we submitted in 2006 and have to have it approved as a function of this process. We had a very good program in 2006 where the FAA required the repair station to submit their manuals in a sequenced, so they didn't flood the FAA with activity. It was really a pretty good approach to this. They're doing it 5,000 at one time right now. The administrative cost alone is going to take a year for the repair stations to be able to capture this. And then you get into things like, in the proposal, a lot of the avionics industry in particular has a challenge with, we typically lease office space and lease hangar space on a space available basis. This proposal bans space available leases. Absolutely bans it.
For what good reason, though? I mean, why should they be concerned at all about what we're using so long as it's there?
This is the interesting thing about this proposal, and it is the worst effort at a proposal I've seen in 20 years in Washington.
Avidyne is the brand of choice for pilots who want innovative, easy-to-use avionics, and the new IFD 540 and 440 FMS GPS navcoms set a new standard for ease of use and simplicity. As plug-and-play replacements for legacy 530 and 430 series navigators, the hybrid touch user interface of the IFD 540 and IFD 440 makes it much easier to access the information you want while reducing head-down time, and making flying more enjoyable. Now you have a choice, and the choice is easy. Avidyne.
We have a situation where literally half of the airplane is electronically integral.
And it's getting worse by the day.
Well, and it's getting more complex, certainly. And, troubleshooting is more integrated. The flight management systems that we used to see only in heavy commercial aircraft are now available in light piston aircraft. And the FAA proposes to eliminate radio and instrument ratings, move them to component only, and require everything at the airframe level to be done from the airframe. And for those that are familiar with the European system, it's very similar to how Europe operates right now. That in and of itself looks like it's a protect our environment kind of arena. But when you look at the history of ratings, that's what the FAA uses to assign inspectors. So now you have an airframe shop, doesn't specify that they do avionics. They only have broad airframe capabilities. How does the FAA assign its inspector workforce to make sure that they have the appropriate talent overseeing the repair station? That tool no longer exists after this proposal. Wasn't part of the proposal, wasn't part of the concern. It was the unintended consequence of this action. This proposal is full of those. We were able in 2001 to allow the just-in-time delivery of technical data or test equipment, high-cost test equipment, or a number of other items. Under the proposal, you must have all of that on site for inspection as a function of getting your new certificate. Again, looks relatively benign in its words, and I could understand where that might be an interest. But the unintended consequence of that is that we never know when the FAA is going to come to our general aviation facility to do the inspection necessary. So now we have to spend thousands or tens of thousands of dollars having this equipment on site for the initial certification of the facility while we have no expectation of a schedule by the FAA. The unintended consequences of this one are phenomenal. And what the FAA didn't do, which makes this literally the worst rulemaking I've seen, is nothing is justified or explained. On the surface, some of it looks good. There's a proposed change to the training program. And what they do is that currently the requirement for a training program is to make sure that the technicians that are assigned to do a task are competent to do that task. Mm-hmm. And it's a successful training program. We support it highly. The proposal is we're going to keep that, but we think that there's 3 topics that shouldn't be advisory any longer, but should be regulatory. Human factors, a good topic. The basic regulations, again, a good topic. And the company's manuals and procedures, again, good topics. Indeed. And if we were to talk about training programs for maintenance and mechanics, we certainly would include those topics. But now we have a regulatory requirement that we must have human factors training. There is no advisory circular or any discussion of what they mean by that. So I don't know what the acceptable means of compliance would be to that regulatory requirement. Does that mean I have to have 16 hours of initial human factors training plus 8 hours of annual recurrent? Does it mean I have to have 40 hours of regulations? There is no description of what the intent of any of these rules are, just simply a mandate to do it.
Welcome to the Aero-News Network, the aviation world's most comprehensive news and information resource. Real-time 24/7 online audio and video programming, where aviation has been getting updated for over a decade. Distributing over 11,000 stories, features, audio, and video programs every year. Only ANN covers aviation and aerospace with this much depth, insight, and expertise. Check us out on the web at aero-news.net.
Well, let's sum up real quickly, though. In one particular area, the most important thing we can do at this point is respond, respond, respond. Where can they get more information? Obviously, AEA is a primary source on this to be able to put together a cogent, learned, intelligent response by November 19th.
Well, the big issue here is that absolutely the response, and the response does not have to be in depth. You know, a 10-minute response is more than enough. And if you've ever used the www.regulations.gov website, it's like filling in a form letter to somebody, and you can do it. It's a very simple process. If you go through the AEA website, we have the links to the Federal Register, so you can read the original Federal Register and the proposal. You can look at the comments there. Knowledge is the best here. Not everybody will be affected by every item. For us, the big issues are we have a top 5. The cost of this proposal is over the top. The FAA has said it's insignificant. Well, you know what? It is not insignificant. This is a very expensive process. The fact that this entire rule has no explanation of the acceptable means of compliance. It's a blank check. You literally are signing a blank check here. By not responding, you're signing a blank check. So that's a big one. For the avionics industry, we think rolling back to a 1930s approach to rating systems is not in the best interest of aviation. The loss of radio and instrument and the avionics specialty trade is a real challenge, both for the industry as well as the agency. The fact that the agency will not have a proven mechanism of assigning technical oversight talent is a real challenge for them. The idea of lease space and the permanency. We have companies who specialize in mobile operations. Not every small airport can support having avionics shops anymore. You know, we're not doing a lot of bench work. So we have the ability for companies who specialize in being mobile to do required checks under, for transponders and altimetry. Those companies don't have permanent hangar space. They have a permanent office, but they use their customers' hangars. That's not allowed under this proposal. And so, these are the things that I encourage people to take a look at. Pick your own top 2 or 3 items, focus on those, get those comments in, and make the FAA answer your challenges. That will at least scope the rule so it's not as much of a blank check.